Man, when I met PJ and you came to Renovate for the first time, and just everything you were going through in life and physically, it's been amazing for me to see just what God's done in your life and just your perseverance through that. And so I wanted you to be able to share that with our congregation today.
Thank you, Dave. So in 2017, it's where this starts. It was an interesting year. I started the year tired, more than anything else. To get through my days, I was drinking a pot of coffee, still adding Red Bulls in the afternoon. I had a pretty intense sales job, managing clients like Amazon, Apple, Google, flying all over the country. And underlying all of that, I was in the middle of a divorce. So I was at not the middle, I was at the tail end of a divorce. And it was a rough year. It was a rough start to the year. Around April of 2017, my divorce was finalized, and I thought, okay, great. My kids are intact. I can move forward. I had gotten in a relationship dating a wonderful woman, Larissa Tate, who also attends Renovate. And, having Dave there, it was great all the way around. A few months later, I got, there had been comments going on throughout the early part of the year that, hey, don't seem like your head's in the game, you seem to be dragging a bit, and I was getting a lot of pressure from my SVP. At the same time, a bunch of the executives that were more expensive in the company had been let go in preparation for an acquisition by MasterCard. So all of this comes to a head in June when I get called into the SVP's office, and he lets me know that they're letting me go from the company. Suddenly, the floor fell out from beneath me. All of this progress, everything that I had built and tried to keep all the spinning plates in the air, suddenly came crashing down. So with about 2 weeks of severance, I set out to find a new job, stressed out, in a mode of panic, and really didn't find anything. Ultimately, a friend connected me with someone for a sales job that paid about a quarter of what I was earning, and not enough to make my bills or even child support. But I took it, it had benefits, and rolled on. In that process, I went to the doctor to get tested because I was like, hey, maybe this fatigue isn't just being old and stressed out about a divorce and being on the road. Maybe something else is going on. And I didn't think so, but I got tested anyway. I remember being at this new job, sitting in a meeting, and my phone started ringing again and again. And I'm like, you do the ignore and you go back to work. Finally, I saw the voicemail to text, and it wasn't the nurse, it was the doctor. It was my doctor. And so I excused myself, I went outside and called him back, and the doctor said, hey, PJ, you need to get to the nearest emergency room right now. Don't do anything else. You are at imminent death risk. So, heeding the call, I packed up. I said, I've got to go. I called Risa. I drove to Cedar Park Regional, checked myself in. The physician had called ahead. They immediately admitted me and drew blood and started doing tests. And I'm confused. I called my mom, who's a nurse, let her know. She started driving up from San Antonio, called my brother. He drove down from Georgetown. Ultimately, we're all in the ER together, and the ER doc comes in after the tests, and she says, this is the hardest part of my job, but you probably want to get your family here because you're in late stage leukemia, and it doesn't look good. And it's like after everything I'd been through that year, it all hit me. Hit me at once. And, I realized, like, God, like, how could it end like this? After everything I've been through and everything I've survived, I have 3 small kids who depend on me. And I went into denial. I actually checked myself out of the ER. They didn't want to let me go. They didn't have an oncology department. They were trying to transfer me to Seton, and I said, I'm out. And they are freaking out, and they're like, you have to sign these liabilities, and we don't want you to go. And I left. Went home and sat with my family. My mom made it up from San Antonio, and Risa and my brother were there, and tried to process it all. And I went to bed, and I prayed that night, and prayed for guidance, for understanding, for everything to be okay. And I woke up in the morning and drove to Seton and checked myself into the hospital. Was admitted immediately. Within minutes, they had started the IVs for chemotherapy. A normal person has a white blood cell count of 8 to 10,000. If you have a bad infection, it might be 20 to 25,000. I was over 350,000. The medical term is sledging. They didn't know how I hadn't stroked out or had a heart attack from where I was at. That absolutely was the presence of God in my life. So we start discussing options around finding a match for a bone marrow donor, things like that, making sure that my family was prepped and ready. And a few days in, my oncologist comes in and she says, hey, we got a kind of a weird result on one of our tests. We see these odd markers, and it's for the rarest type of leukemia. And it would actually be a good thing if that was the case. And so I had a bone marrow biopsy. They sent it off to the lab. That came in several days after that. I'm just beat up in the hospital. I'm on really hard chemotherapy. It was tough. It was a really tough experience. Throughout this time, all I had left was God. And I remember getting my ex to bring the kids to see me and looking at them and looking in their eyes and thinking that they were not going to have their dad anymore. And that's a feeling that I hope nobody ever has to feel. The panic, the fear, the lack of control. And when you get reduced to that state, all you have left is your faith. There is nothing else. And I turned everything to God, every bit of it. I had nothing. And the tests come back, and the oncologist is like, it's like a miracle. You know, wow. You have CML. This is something we generally see in the elderly and like people exposed to radiation. It's very uncommon for a young male to have it. But there was a miracle treatment that was developed in 2004 for this, and you're going to be okay. You're going to get put on a form of oral chemotherapy. It doesn't have terrible side effects. You'll pop a pill a day, and you can go about your life. And I walked out of the hospital a few days later, and a changed person. I realized that what God gave me in that experience was one of the greatest gifts of my life. And you know, it strengthened my faith in ways that I can't even describe. And so anyway, that is my testimony, and thank you for listening.